and historian reportings of, Islamic history, the Islamic Golden Age, all of these things can influence academics to, convert to Islam and choose Islam as a way of life. You've also got life events. So some people either have traumatic life events that make them rethink, their purpose in life, or you have like a life event that is positive, that will make you rethink your connection with God, that will make you rethink again the purpose of our existence and the purpose of this entire universe existing. So a positive life experience could be, for example, a miracle happening, like a miracle that's happened to you that only God could have done. Like it's beyond human control. So you see all these videos on YouTube and Instagram of people being saved from horrible disasters, in a second, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had protected them from it. So there can be miraculous events in someone's life that can actually make them consider there actually being a God that exists. And then when they start to research more about God, they are led to Islam. And vice versa as well. So some people can have traumatic life experiences such as death, questioning the death of a loved one, and, is that it? Is that it for their life? Where do they go after this? It's the comfort of knowing that there's an afterlife. So a traumatic experience of a loved one, for example, can actually, lead someone to consider Islam. The Islamic explanation for death, because it's comforting for them. Some people convert to Islam just because they want to try it out. So, you get people who like to dabble in different religions to see which one suits them the most. And, you get loads of people who, they might try out Buddhism for a week or a month, and then they try out, Christianity for a month, and then Judaism for a month, and then Islam for a month. So if people have tried out, different, living in the context of different religions, and they come across Islam and they try Islam for a month, then that can be a determining factor for them choosing to convert to Islam. So I actually know someone personally who decided to convert to Islam after trying to fast the month of Ramadan. They fasted the whole 30 days, saw amazing health benefits from that, and decided to convert. Because, of the benefits that they'd received from the holy month. So some people just try it out and then like it and then decide to become Muslims. Other people who convert to Islam are those who have issues within their societies and the religion that they're already in. So you get, for example, many Christians who are uncomfortable with the concept of worshipping Jesus, who is a human being like the rest of us. They are uncomfortable with the thought that, a God can die. If we're meant to worship Jesus and he's meant to be the Son of God, then how can he die? And how can, God let him be crucified by the enemy if he's the Almighty and the All-Powerful? So thoughts like this that don't make sense to people who are already following a religion can cause people to, consider Islam as the truth because it makes more sense. And again, if they're living in a society that's highly immoral, where they just feel that society is going so backwards and downhill very quickly, that can also cause people to want a more religious lifestyle, a more traditional lifestyle, a lifestyle that's more in line with their values. So, for example, people who lived in the 80s and 90s and had more traditional marriages and traditional societies won't feel comfortable living in 2023, where concept of marriage and relationships and love and community and family is all very distorted and all very corrupted. So if someone is looking for a community that holds the values that they have within themselves, then they are more likely to consider a more traditional, conservative and religious environment to be in. Another reason would be a romantic partner. So someone might convert because their partner is Muslim. So again, it could be a man who needs to convert to be with a Muslim woman, or it could be a woman who is just choosing to convert to Islam because, she wants to please the family of, the man she's in love with, or to please him if that's his requirement because he wants to raise his children as Muslims. So being in a romantic relationship can also influence someone's decision to convert to Islam. And finally, again, this is not the extensive list of people, of why people convert to Islam, but these are the main reasons. The final point I'd like to make would be people who convert to Islam because of celebrity influence. So if you have people who you would highly admire and they're highly influential, they're famous, they're celebrities, they might be professors and academics who are very, very well known in community. They might be public speakers. They could be, priests and religious leaders of other faiths who convert to Islam. If you follow these people and you have a high, admiration for them, then their conversion to Islam can influence you to convert to Islam. So, the most recent example now would be Andrew Tate. There are so many reports now of many of his followers looking into Islam and converting to Islam because they trust him. They trust what he says. They hold him in, high esteem. So when someone is trusted, who you admire, and they decide to convert to Islam, then you'll find that many of their followers will do the same, because what they think is, well, if this person can convert to Islam and this is a very highly intelligent person, then they must be doing something right. They must know what they're doing. Let me have a look into it as well, because I actually like the way this person thinks. I like the way this person lives. I like this person's logic. And so you'll find that, celebrities and famous people are, a turning point, that their conversion is a turning point for many people in their lives. So now that we've got the main reasons out of the way, as to why people convert and what their expectations are of Islam. So again, their expectations could be to find peace, to find answers, to find solace, to find an identity, to find out who you are. Once those expectations, have been addressed by, the act of converting to Islam, people will now begin life as a Muslim. Some people jump into it straight away and they're very keen on, being practicing very early on. So they may actually take a longer time to convert because they spend more time researching, what it is to be a Muslim, like the 5 daily prayers and the fasting and, the covering for a Muslim woman and all those things. So some people take it so seriously, especially those who want to try out the religion. So if you want to try it out, then you need to try it out by practicing it fully to see if this is a religion that's right for you, and if you're actually able to sustain and maintain an Islamic lifestyle. So you'll find people who convert at different stages. Some people take years to research it before they jump in and convert. Some people take days, some people take weeks, some people take months. It's different for everybody, because the reasons are different for everybody. So, I've seen YouTube videos of people who convert on the same day they're given dawah. On the same day, they will take their shahada, whereas someone else will take 4 or 5 years because they want to research, they want to learn how to pray first, they want to learn, so many things of, about Islam that they need more convincing, basically. They need more convincing to see that, they will be making the right decision. So the time it takes for someone to convert will have an impact on how long they are usually Muslims for. So if people jump into the faith without really researching it properly, without meeting the right kinds of Muslims, then you will find that they do not stay Muslims for very long. People who have researched Islam for longer, they have a very good support network of Muslims. They have amazing teachers who who teach them about Islam, they are more likely to be Muslims for longer, if not for life. You also get Muslims who are, they're in communities that are supportive, their non-Muslim families are supportive. You've got them having supportive friends and spouses too, if they do get married to Muslims later on. All of these factors determine how long someone is likely to stay a Muslim. So, problems that they might face along the way would be, no support from Muslims. All of a sudden they find themselves on their own. They're lonely. The Muslims who, celebrated their conversions are nowhere to be found afterwards because it's a responsibility. Muslims need to invest time, energy, knowledge, and, companionship into, new Muslims in their communities because, it is seen as an investment. If you're happy for someone to, convert to Islam, but you don't have the time, patience, energy, or knowledge to help and support this person, then, your position and your honor as a Muslim is being tarnished here, because this is a fantastic opportunity for you, to step up and actually be the role model that they need and be the support that they need. So unfortunately, a lot of reverts do not get the support that they need in the beginning because they do not already have a good support network of Muslim friends prior to, converting to Islam or at the time of conversion, who, when they meet people who are dedicated to helping them in their journeys. You've also got a lot of reverts who suffer with having bad teachers. So, for example, someone might revert to Islam and they will be recommended scholars or, Islamic teachers to learn from. And these teachers are problematic. Their understanding of Islam is very problematic. They may be very patriarchal. They may be very cultural. They may be very strict and narrow-minded in their interpretation and understanding of Islam. They might be narcissistic and they project their own favourable understanding of Islamic teachings onto their students. This is a huge problem for both men and women, because if you have, the incorrect teachers who teach you, Islamic information, it can either make you hate the religion later down the line because you see it as being very patriarchal, misogynistic, oppressive, and difficult to practice, because a lot of these teachers who teach Islam in a problematic way, they teach it in accordance to what they believe Islam should, how Islam should be practiced. So, for example, you need to appear a certain way. Men have to have the big beards and they have to wear the thobs. I mean, you're talking to people who are European here and English. They're not. It's going to be a very difficult transition for them, to go from, dressing in the way that they normally dress to all of a sudden, wearing a full abaya, face veil, growing a massive beard and, wearing the thob and looking Asian or Arab. You're actually transitioning them to actually look Asian or Arab rather than Muslim. There is nothing that specifies how a Muslim should dress. A Muslim should dress modestly. Yes, it's good for men to grow a beard, but it doesn't have to be a big one. It's just for their own masculine identity. And women should cover, and they should cover modestly. So when you get teachers who preach the 7th century version of Islam to people living in 2023, you're going to get people who leave Islam because it's going to be too difficult to live that way. It's going to be too difficult to live with such a prominent identity that they believe you should have. So many people drop out of Islam because of that. It becomes very difficult. I mean, imagine one day being English, turning up to your family house wearing a abaya and a face veil, and you've been used to wearing jeans and t-shirts all your life. Can you imagine how difficult that would be for your family to accept that? And can you imagine how you're going to have more mental health problems because now you don't feel accepted in your own family, and they've kicked you out of the house, and they don't want anything to do with you because you have joined a terrorist gang, or a very or you've joined ISIS or something. That's how they see it. And then you get more mental health problems because now you're showing a more strict and restricted version of Islam in your practicing of it. So sometimes when you have the wrong teachers, they will expect you to jump straight into the deep end in your practicing of Islam. They require you to move to an Islamic environment, away from your non-Muslim families. They will sometimes require you to cut off your non-Muslim parents who drink and eat pork and all those things. And they encourage you to marry problematic Muslims as well. So they say, you should get married, you shouldn't be single. I will introduce you to a brother, I will introduce you to a sister who is, who will be good for you in your conversion journey. And then that person will be a very strict Muslim or a narcissistic Muslim or someone who follows the same problematic Islamic understanding as the teacher. So this is one of the main reasons why a lot of people end up leaving Islam, because they don't actually know that this is a problematic understanding of Islam. They haven't researched it enough to understand that Islam is not like this. It's not meant to be practiced like this. You are not expected to pray 5 times a day as soon as you convert. It took the Sahaba a long time. Many of the Sahaba, it took them a long time for them to get into the 5 daily prayers. The only way they actually managed to do it efficiently was because they belonged to, a revert society of Muslims at the time. They were all supporting and helping each other. So if you are not, if you don't have a revert society, and you jump straight into a Muslim society where, the majority are, Asians, Arabs, African, you're going to struggle. You're going to struggle because you cannot really relate to people who have newly joined Islam. You are now, being compared to people who have been practicing their whole lives. So this is a huge problem. You really need to research different interpretations of Islam. Don't take someone's word for it. If something seems off and problematic to you, ask about it. Because there is a very peaceful and loving and spiritual way of teaching Islam and practicing Islam. And there's also, the very harsh practicing of Islam and the difficult practicing of Islam that makes it very difficult for Europeans and English people to follow on a daily basis. It just becomes too difficult and they quit. So you have to make sure you've got the right teachers, okay? An example of a fantastic teacher, and I always say this, is Sheikh Omar Suleiman. Omar Suleiman is a fantastic example of a Muslim teacher who teaches Islam in a peaceful, beautiful manner, and in the way that it's meant to be taught. Even in his tone of voice, the way he lovingly talks about the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ and the Sahaba and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. All of these things are important when you come to consider Islam. Don't fall into the trap of just following scholars blindly when you're not 100% sure about what's right and what's wrong. Yasmin Mujahid as well. She's an amazing scholar, amazing female scholar who teaches Islam, in a beautiful way. So, you've got to be around people who are peaceful and loving in their teaching of Islam, rather than harsh and too strict. This leads me on to the third point, which is people's confusion with sects. So as you might not know, if you are a new Muslim or someone who's considering Islam, there are many different sects of Islam. So some people are, Sunni Muslims, Salafi Muslims, Shia Muslims, Ahmadi Muslims, Sufi Muslims. There are many different types of Muslims, and you need to be very aware of those sects. Okay, and the reason why I say that is because one day you might meet a Shia Muslim who will give you Islamic teachings and knowledge about a specific subject in Islam, and then the week after that you'll meet a Sufi Muslim who will give you the complete opposite information about that. And then after that you'll meet a Sunni Muslim whose opinions as well are different. So I actually know people who left Islam because they got so confused and they didn't know what was right. They didn't understand that the reason why they couldn't practice Islam efficiently is because they kept getting different opinions. They kept getting confused with different schools of thought and different, sect ideologies and different beliefs and opinions on one subject. And so they thought, this is too confusing. I'm unable to do this. I don't know what's right. I don't know what's wrong. I'm going to leave. So, I'm not advocating here for people to follow a specific sect. I mean, I'm Sunni. I follow the Sunni, way of life, because it's the most moderate way of life and it's the most logical way of life. But many people who do not understand the difference between Sunni, Shia, Sufi, Ahmadi, and so on, will get confused, and it can be a huge cause of them leaving Islam. So please, if you are considering Islam or you are a new Muslim, please know the difference between them. Please know the difference between the different sects, so that you will understand that when someone comes to you with an opinion, you will know it's a Shia opinion, you will know it's a Sunni opinion, and so on. You need to follow one. Sunni Islam is the mainstream, understanding of Islam. So the majority of the Muslims in the world are Sunni Muslims. So I would recommend starting there. Another reason that causes many people to leave Islam is the confusion of culture with religion. So if a new Muslim decides to live in a Muslim community, that community, whether it's Asian, African or Middle Eastern, can be very patriarchal, very backwards. They can be practicing, values in society that go against the values of Islam. So, for example, let's take the example of, patriarchy and men who are very misogynistic, men who are very problematic in their dealings with women. Now, the patriarchal culture was actually prevalent in pre-Islamic Arabia, and the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, he actually came to abolish this. He came to abolish oppressive practices against women and children. But unfortunately, you will still find patriarchy and misogynistic, people in Muslim societies of today, and they do link that to Islam. They do teach people that this is a part of Islam. Men are rulers over women. Women have to obey the men, and so on. And that comes across in their patriarchy and their problematic behavior. So if a non-Muslim doesn't know that this actually has nothing to do with Islam, they may be put off Islam. They may think that actually, Islam is a misogynistic religion. It's an oppressive religion. I don't know why I converted. I need to leave. Because unfortunately, the practicing Muslims that they see are actually living in accordance to oppressive cultural practices. They are living in accordance to a problematic way of life. But they're appearing as practicing Muslims. So it's very confusing. So a lot of people think, well, if these people are practicing Muslims and they pray and they go to the mosque and they fast and everything, and this is their culture, then the culture must tie in with the religion. And that's why many people leave Islam. That's why we have all these media problems all over the world. People who are tying oppression, tying, all of these horrible practices to Islam, because practicing Muslims are, they are living a very backwards cultural lifestyle that the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ himself came to abolish. So unfortunately, a lot of people are bringing it back. Generations of people who, don't like men and women being equal and all sorts of things. These types of people who are bringing pre-Islamic Arabian culture into our modern day society because it suits them. This is again, it goes back to who narcissistic Muslims are. The Muslim narcissist is somebody who, who applies oppression and applies bad behavior and bad treatment on the lives of, to their own lives and the lives of other people. We'll get onto that more later about who Muslim narcissists are. However, if you're living in a culture or a cultural environment where, the behavior of people doesn't really tie into the peaceful message of Islam, then know that you're not really in an Islamic environment here. You are in a cultural environment. And many people actually don't know that it's culture. Many born Muslims, many Asians, Africans and Arabs, they don't actually know they're practicing Islam in a cultural way out of ignorance. A lot of people don't actually know that the culture they are, they're living by has nothing to do with Islam. And they just think that this is normal, that this is, having your parents force you to marry someone of their choice and, spending tens of thousands of pounds in dowries, that this is Islamic practice. It's not. None of it is Islamic practice. That, turning away someone because of their skin colour for marriage, they think that could be an Islamic practice. It's not. None of that is Islamic. All of that is cultural. So, a lot of men left Islam because, like if you have an African convert and he is interested in a Pakistani woman or an Arab woman and he goes to propose marriage to her family, the father says no, just purely because of his skin colour. And now he's thinking, hold on, Islam promotes equality. Islam says that there is no difference between someone who is black and white, except in their piety. What elevates someone is their piety. So why am I being rejected by born Muslim families when Islam teaches them that everyone is equal? Why is it that I'm being rejected now for my skin colour? I've seen this, I've heard this story many times, and it causes a lot of men in particular to leave Islam. It causes them to leave Islam because they think, well, if the Muslim community is racist and they discriminate against people who have a different skin colour, or they're from a different caste, or they're from a different, social status, then what difference is there between Islam and the life I was living before? I was already living in a racist society. I came to Islam because I didn't want to be projected I didn't want the racism projected onto me anymore. I wanted to live in a society where I felt equal to everybody else. So of course that's going to be a reason for someone to leave Islam if they don't see any difference in Muslims' attitude towards them. So again, unfortunately, the main reason for many people leaving Islam is because of the way Muslims behave towards new Muslims. And also because of a lack of knowledge. Now, if new Muslims knew that this behaviour of Muslims, the racist attitudes of Muslims, of some Muslims, is problematic and it's not Islamic, then it wouldn't be a cause for them to leave the faith. It wouldn't be a cause for them to leave Islam as a way of life. They would know and understand that these Muslims are problematic. They are not. They are the ones who are not following Islam properly. How can this father be praying all 5 prayers in the local mosque and he's doing fundraising and charity and dawah, but he won't let an African man marry his daughter? Where's the Islam in this person's character? If you're knowledgeable, if you've received the right teachings from the right people, when you come across problematic Muslims, you will know how to separate problematic behaviour from the true teachings of Islam. Unfortunately, many people cannot differentiate between the two, or actually between the three. So you've got problematic Muslims, a problematic culture, and Islam. Many new Muslims and Muslims people who have been reverts for a long time still cannot differentiate between the three. They cannot unlink problematic Muslim behaviour and a problematic culture with Islam. They cannot disconnect them because they don't have enough knowledge about Islam, to be able to do that. So it's so important that you really research and study the true meaning of Islam and how Muslims are meant to be, so that when you do come across problematic Muslims and problematic cultural practices, you know that they have nothing to do with Islam. Because unfortunately, the lack of knowledge will cause you to leave something that is so beautiful for you. You know, your faith and this new connection that you've got with God, and a new moral lifestyle and a healthier lifestyle, you're going to be giving all of that up, which is what originally attracted you to the faith. You're going to be giving all of that up for other Muslims corrupting, your vision of what Islam is. So please, do take your time, do research, do follow great teachers who will teach you about the issues that you're facing. So if you are facing a racism problem in your Muslim community, please have a look. Please dive into research about it. Like Google Omar Suleiman on YouTube and see what he says about racism in Islam. See what he says about racism in Muslim communities. You have to do that for yourself. If you're someone who's struggling in a marriage with a problematic Muslim, go on these YouTube channels and find out why. Why is it that someone can pray 5 times a day but be so abusive? Don't link it to Islam. Don't make the mistake of jumping straight into blaming Islam for it, because the two are completely disconnected. And that's why I'm trying to do all of these podcasts, to teach people how to disconnect the three from each other. Another reason why people leave Islam is because of failed marriages. So if you've married a Muslim and that Muslim has abused you, that Muslim has, has basically put you through spiritual abuse, religious abuse, narcissistic abuse, the lot, then someone is very likely to leave Islam, because that person has left a very bitter taste in their mouth of what Islam means, of what being a Muslim means. They come into Islam, they marry a Muslim because they want the support, they want the encouragement to live an Islamic lifestyle. They want someone who is from the faith, who can help them and be that comfort for them. But instead, they're taken advantage of. They're used and abused by Muslims, because these Muslims are taking advantage of the fact that these new Muslims don't have enough knowledge about their rights. They don't have enough knowledge about the deen. They don't have enough knowledge about what's right and what's wrong and what's acceptable and what's not, and what's Islam and what's not. This actually applies mainly to young women who convert to Islam. I cannot say it enough. Do not jump into marriage with a Muslim man in your early days of conversion. It's a mistake so many women make, because you are perfect prey for narcissists. You are perfect prey for psychopaths, because in their minds you don't have enough knowledge about Islam. You don't know what's acceptable or not. You don't know how religious and spiritual abuse will be subjected on you. You have no idea, because you don't know the difference between an abusive Muslim and someone who's meant to be practicing. What you will find is the abusive Muslim will come across as someone very practicing and very strict, and that you will believe that this is how Muslim men are. In the beginning, you will be dazzled by, a Muslim's charm. And this goes for women too, both men and women. You will be dazzled by their charm, by their promises of helping you, their promises of supporting you, their promises of, being there for you and being everything for you, especially if you've lost your families because you've converted to Islam. You will find that. You will get love bombed. So for many young women who come across, young, handsome Muslim men who are willing to marry them, it's seen as a golden opportunity, because let's face it, right, in Western society, you'd be lucky if a man proposes. It's just one of those things where women are waiting for years and years and years for a man to commit and propose marriage. So when a young, handsome man comes along and he's charming and he seems to be quite knowledgeable about Islam, when a man comes across to a new Muslim girl like that, a new Muslim woman, she is very dazzled, and she will just think that she's hit the jackpot, when unfortunately, a lot of these men come into your life and test your knowledge first. They want to see, have you done your research about Islam? What do you follow? Who do you follow? Who's your teacher? They test you on so many things to see if you know your rights or not. Now, if you don't know your rights, you are prime target, prime target for religious and spiritual abuse that's to come. And men aren't so much on the receiving end of this. Men tend to get caught up in the more problematic cultural side of Islam. So once they marry a woman, from, Asian, African or Middle Eastern background, he will feel pressured at all the cultural things that he needs to kind of abide by. Maybe having to go to the mosque all the time to show face and show that he's, a sincere convert, and, he might have to dress a certain way or do certain things that are not, not required of him Islamically, but they're required by her culture. And that's when he'll start to get fed up and sick of, being a Muslim, because he's doing things that he's not been raised to do in his own culture, and it's an alien culture that he feels like he's been pressurized into. So men will often be on the receiving end of that, rather than the spiritual abuse from women. And also from the men I've spoken to about this, they've said that they felt taken advantage of by Muslim women who basically use them as, nannies, and to be the sole caretakers of their children, knowing they can't really get away with that with men from their own cultures. So for men, that's the main issue. For women, they are groomed. So they are groomed by narcissistic Muslim men. And the reason why they fall prey to them is because they don't know the difference. They don't know the difference between a good Muslim and not. They don't know the difference between a believing Muslim and a practicing Muslim. A practicing Muslim is very different to someone who comes across as a believing Muslim. So a believing Muslim is practicing and he's got very good character. Very good character that a lot of people can vouch for, actually. But a practicing Muslim is just someone who's seen as, a guy who goes to the mosque and prays and fasts and does da'wah and, does charity. He's seen to do that. He's seen to be practicing. But his actions and his values and his behavior, his attitude, his character, his morals, his manners don't match up to what a Muslim should be. So if you find someone, going to the mosque, but he's flirting with women, he's quite aggressive, he's quite abusive, he's got anger problems, that's not someone who's a true believing Muslim. A true believing Muslim is someone who treats everyone with respect, with love, with care, because he believes that there's a day of judgment coming. It's one of the main pillars of Iman. That, that's what makes a Muslim a believing Muslim. So don't get fooled by someone who appears to be practicing. If their character does not match up to their level of practicing Islam and their prayers, know that there's something not right with that person. And you would only know the difference if you actually met people who were believing Muslims who had amazing level of character. If the first Muslims you come across are problematic Muslims, you're going to think that that's what it means to be Muslim. Men who are controlling, possessive, aggressive, pressurizing, all of that is not from Islam. That's in his character. That's in his bad character if he comes across, being that way. And the other danger of, young women falling prey to these Muslim men is that, these men know that they can get away with it. Why can they get away with it? Because these women don't have tribes behind them. They don't have big families behind them. They don't have a community behind them. More often than not, this woman has come from a family that have rejected her conversion to Islam, or she doesn't have a good relationship with her family, or they live far away. So the more isolated she is from a community, support network and her family, the more he believes that he can get away with deceiving her, marrying her quickly, and, applying all his narcissism on her. So, this is especially for those women who don't have a wali. A wali is the male guardian who is there to vet a man, a potential suitor for marriage. He's there to ask about him. He's there to make sure that the woman marries someone good, of good character. If she doesn't have that male guardian, who is usually her father or her brother, then he's going to take advantage of that as well. He's really going to take advantage of her vulnerable situation. And more often than not as well, he will take her to go and get married in some back street mosque, to some dodgy imam who's operating from a basement or the back of a restaurant takeaway, or university car park or something like that. I know a woman who actually got married with a £1 dowry. She was a young English girl, and the imam accepted that he gives her £1 as her dowry because she doesn't understand what dowry is. She didn't understand what her rights were. And because the imam was a dodgy one too, with a problematic understanding of Islam, he accepted that. Now, if you go to a mosque like Cambridge Mosque, for example, the minimum amount of dowry is £1,000 to ensure that all women get their rights and aren't taken advantage of. But if you go to an imam who accepts something like that a man only pays like £10 or £1 or gives something very insignificant to a woman, know that imam is in on the narcissism. He's in on it. Now, born Muslims know that they Asian Africans and Arab women know that a man can't get away with that. He knows he can't get away with that if he was to marry, someone from a good family or, from his own community, because there are standards that he has to live by. Now, if he wants to get away from fulfilling those standards of people, then he will target people who have no idea what to expect, no idea what their rights are. And who are the best people to target? Not new Muslims. It's really sad. It's horrific to even talk about this, but I've seen it so many times. Working in the Islamic Cultural Centre, I've got horrific stories from there, things that I've seen that have gone on. If you are going to get married to a Muslim, do it properly. Go to an Islamic centre. Go to a mosque like Cambridge Mosque or Regent's Park Mosque, Finsbury Park Mosque. Go to a registered mosque where you can get your rights and you can get a proper Islamic marriage certificate. And at least you've got a place where you can ask about this guy. Find people who can ask about this person who's come to propose to you. It's so important to do your due diligence on people these days, especially these days. Some men come to the country having no papers. They might be refugees. There might be refugees taking advantage of a British woman who's who can help him get his papers. So you've got to be very careful. You've got to be very careful, very aware, and you've got to really take your time enjoying your conversion journey before jumping into any marriage with anybody. Because what will happen is you will jump into a marriage with someone and you will be subjected to emotional, spiritual, and religious abuse. For example, a man might say, in Islam, a woman has to obey her husband, and he might show you the text for that. Obviously, he's taking it from a literal, understanding. In the hadith, there is an explanation of what this is and what kind of man, he has to be, what kind of husband he has to be to earn the obedience of his wife. He's got to be an amazing man who she respects and looks up to and loves. And a woman is not going to be submissive and look up to a man who abuses her. It's not going to happen. She's going to be rebellious. It's just logical common sense. If you want a woman to be submissive and you want a woman to be obedient to you, then you have to be the best husband to that woman. You've got to be everything to her. Her emotional, her emotional place of comfort. You've got to be her provider, her protector, her leader, someone she can feel safe with, someone she feels happy to be around, someone she feels she can trust. Now, if all those things are not present and you are demanding and pressurizing her to obey you, and you get angry and blame her for being disobedient and disobeying Allah because she has not bowed down to a man who is acting like a complete oppressor, complete tyrant, then that man has issues. That man has serious issues if he thinks that's how women operate. It's not a slave-master relationship, but unfortunately, a lot of new Muslim women get into a slave-master relationship thinking this is what Islam is. And then it's no surprise at all when these women later don't want to be Muslims and they want to leave Islam because the experience they've had of an Islamic marriage has been horrific. They were better off marrying a non-Muslim who would have treated them better. So unfortunately, again, women get into these relationships very quickly. They're love bombed very quickly. They get into a nikah very quickly without actually knowing the person, without knowing the true intentions of a person. They're just impressed by the outward look of this guy who's, who prays in the mosque and shows her what he, she knows she wants to see as a new Muslim. She wants someone religious who can help her. So, I've seen women, there's actually a charity called Solace for revert sisters in difficulty. Women who go there are suicidal. Women who go there are, run away from their marital homes because the guy is so abusive. The guy is so, whether it's domestic violence, whether it's physical violence, whether it's whatever kind of abuse it is, because she's got nowhere to go, she's got no community, no family to go back to. A lot of these women end up committing suicide, harming themselves, running away, losing their children, because, a lot of Muslim men have devious ways of, getting the access and custody of their children. And also they're subjected to abuse by their in-laws. Abuse and pressure by their in-laws. Because they're not conforming to what, a practicing Muslim woman should be. They get harassed for not wearing the hijab properly, harassed for not praying on time, harassed for not wearing, Asian clothing because the mother-in-law wants to see that, harassed for not learning Urdu or Arabic, and pressurized to live with her in-laws, and all that is pressure, and all that is baggage, and all of that will definitely push someone out of Islam. It's a no-brainer. So, we really have to look after these people who come into Islam, because at the end of the day, many of them are finding themselves converting to become Arabs, Asians, Africans, rather than become Muslims and actually live an enjoyable, peaceful life. So women have to be really careful. Women especially have to be really careful. You've got to really open your eyes to all the different types of Muslims you will come across. You really need to give yourself time to study the different types of Muslims there are out there. Learn the difference. Learn how to seek those who are peaceful, beautiful, calm, and they are Muslims in their actions. They are Muslims in their good character, Muslims in their good conduct with people and with the good conduct within themselves. Muslims who are peaceful, loving, kind are healed Muslims. They are Muslims who would never oppress or hurt themselves or anyone else. So please be very wary of that. If a man comes across being very flirty, love bombing you, taking advantage of you, being on your own, asking you if you live alone, dating you, outside the boundaries of Islam, all of those are red flags. Please, please, please have a look at my book, have a good read of it, because it has been written for new Muslims as well to recognize the different types of Muslims out there. Please read it. It will save your life. It has been written to save people from falling into the trap of narcissistic people who appear to be Muslims and who identify as Muslims. So it's been written for you. Please grab a copy of it, have a good read of it, and you're more than welcome to message me if you've got any questions, or if you need some help, identifying if someone is an abuser or not. If you're considering them for marriage, just DM me on Instagram. Come to my weekly workshops that I do for free. Just sign up to the newsletter and you'll get emails about the free weekly workshops. If there's someone that you're considering for marriage, whether you're a man or a woman, and you need some help identifying if this person is taking advantage of you, I'm happy to help. Please just send me a DM, email, whatever. Come to the workshop and I'm happy to help you. So, yeah. So, I'm coming towards the end of the podcast now, and I just want to teach people that this is a serious problem now in our communities, where people are leaving Islam unnecessarily because of narcissistic Muslims. Unfortunately, we need to have more of a support network for them. And in my PhD study, I actually recommended that new Muslims join communities of other new Muslims. So either create your own, if there isn't one in your community, join all these Facebook groups and find all the new Muslims in your community, in your village, in your town, and set up a community together. Okay, it'll be much easier for you to do that than to join a very cultural Muslim community like an Arab one or an Asian one. Yeah, there are some people who enjoy doing that and they prefer to be amongst, people who have been Muslims all their lives. But if you're finding difficulty in integrating, your British culture or your Western culture or your American culture into the society with, connecting it to Islamic principles, then form your own community. Find all the reverts in your community. Form a group, form your own environment, and have that community together. Have your own mosque, even if it's in someone's house. You can start with someone's house and support each other. The best way is to support each other and follow the best teachers that you can find. Again, Umar Suleiman is a fantastic one. Yasir Qadi is a fantastic one. Mufti Mink is also good. But if you want someone who is very calm and amazing in character, and someone who you can actually you can get peace from as well in learning about Islam, Umar Suleiman. Do like weekly gatherings where you guys all sit together and learn about different subjects every week. Take a different YouTube video every week. Take books and read them, and then discuss them. And form your own communities, or join other communities that have a lot of reverts in them. There are many in Norwich, there are many in Cambridge and Oxford, and I'm sure there are many as well in the US and other parts of the world. So that would be my recommendation for you. Socialize with other reverts, find your support network with other reverts, and marry other reverts as well, because they will be in the same boat, and you can learn about Islam together. You don't have to marry a Muslim just for you to learn more about Islam and be supported. I honestly recommend that you marry other reverts who are seeking what you're seeking, because it's a beautiful journey to go on together. So again, please be very careful when associating problematic Muslim behavior with problematic Muslim cultures to Islam. Do not let them ruin the beautiful image of Islam that you came to fall in love with when you first converted. It's so important that you learn how to differentiate between the three. And please read my book. It's all in there. It will teach you how to disconnect from all three of them, and how you can actually enjoy a conversion journey. I also recommend that you read my PhD thesis. It's been written in a way that's understandable for the majority of people, so that you can benefit from it. You'll find it on ePrints. I will put a link to it in the YouTube channel on this video for you to have a good read of it, and it will teach you how you can actually create your own communities, and how best to learn about Islam, and how to differentiate between different types of Muslims from different sects and all walks of life and all walks of cultures. So I hope that's helped, inshallah. I hope that's opened your eyes to the issue a little bit. And it's very important that, again, if there are Muslims out there who have got reverts as friends, please support them as best as you can. It is so important, because, if we cannot support the people who come into our beautiful faith in the best way possible, then we lose. We also lose the ajr of, protecting them from, leaving something so beautiful behind. So I hope, inshallah, that has been beneficial for you. And inshallah, until the next podcast, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.